It's such a weird job. It's the weirdest job that I can think of.
It is a weird job.
There is something magical about sitting around eating junk food with your crew after something really, really terrible happens.
Let's do this. This is Ginger Locke, and welcome to the experiment that I've named Medic Mindset. The idea is for other medics or paramedic students to have a chance to be a fly on the wall and listen as I attempt to dissect the inner workings of a medic's mind. I think the content is useful, especially to new medics. And at a minimum, I'm having a blast connecting with these guys. I respect them tremendously, and making the podcast has been a phenomenal creative outlet. Along the lines of creativity, the audio you hear is raw and almost entirely unedited. And it only made sense to me to do it this way because that's how I know the field of EMS to be. It's raw, and it's certainly unedited. In this episode, we talked to Susie, and this one was fun because she relaxes and gets real about some issues that every medic understands, but you really don't hear them discuss. She shares the quirky habit she had on tough calls that she didn't even know she was doing until someone pointed it out. How she battles motion sickness in the back of the truck with patients in that same compartment. Parts of the job that are hard that she never really considered would be hard. And hang around to the end where she bravely discusses the unique intimacy shared between EMS partners. Susie, welcome to the show. Thanks for letting me pick through your brain. Let's jump right in with the first thing I'm curious about.
So if you could go back to paramedic school, nice face. But you could only go for a day. Is there any lab, clinical, lecture you could repeat?
One day?
Yeah, just one day.
Whew.
And I guess essentially what I'm asking is what topic you feel like, oh man, I must have missed that day.
Cardiology in general.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to say one day, but that's one thing that it's so detailed that I didn't pay as much attention to that I wish that I would have on a daily basis.
I know where you work it's a lot of cardiac, a lot of geriatric calls that basically everybody buys themselves a monitor. So I need to back up a little bit and for you to say just generally what type of environment you work in. So like, is it urban? Is it fire-based?
A little bit more rural, and we work with a lot of different agencies, several different volunteer fire departments, a couple big paid ones, but it's definitely pretty far from a cardiac facility. Mm-hmm. At least 45 minutes, if not more. So being able to recognize things. Oh, and a giant geriatric population as well.
Right.
So being able to recognize things and treat them for that hour that you're transporting is huge.
Mm-hmm. What area, if today, let's say you couldn't work in the field anymore and so you opt to come back to teach, right? And of all the classes that you took, what would be your topic area what would be your niche? What do you feel like you are?
I think special pops. And part of that comes from working with geriatric population. Mm-hmm. Just trying to maybe teach compassion as much as possible, which is not always a teachable thing, but being prepared for how much compassion you need to do the job really well. But also, I'm pregnant currently, so interested in that, and pediatrics are interesting as well.
Yeah. Well then, since you've shared that you're pregnant, let's go there. Let's talk about that. Are you anticipating... Well, let me ask you this. The pregnancy, has it changed your work schedule or is anything different?
I've been binge working, just preparing. So I've been working 48s all the time, which is pretty rough. And the first part of the pregnancy in the back of a vehicle with intense morning sickness, throwing up on the fly behind the patient secretly all the time. Like having my mints in my water.
Do they know that you threw up?
Back. No, I got really good at it because I was so sick and just the motion made it worse. You don't eat and you get nauseous, but if you eat, then you're going to throw up in the truck.
Right.
So you have to sneak back to the captain's chair and do it real quick.
You don't think they smell that?
I don't know.
I love it.
But that was rough. But I also find that the patients love it. Mm-hmm. They always want to talk about it, and they can be in a ton of pain or complaining about anything, and then they kind of notice the bump and they're like, oh. And
Right.
then we had this common ground, and it's been great. Everybody's making predictions about the gender, and so it hasn't changed anything like that, but it's definitely made me less invincible feeling, because in the beginning you're like, oh, I'm such a badass paramedic, you know, I want to go into these houses and save people, and I don't care if it's dangerous, and I want to do rescues and all this, and no fear about being in the back of the truck. And now I find myself seated with a seatbelt on 10 times more often, because I, you know, all of a sudden it's not just me, and I'm thinking about the future. Because that's one thing in school, they always talk about safety, but you don't really realize how dangerous this job can be.
Yep. I really didn't realize how dangerous it was. I've had very unfortunately, more than one coworker die in the line of duty. And the first one, I thought, oh, this is a freak accident. This will never happen again in my career. And then the second one, I thought, what is happening? I still wonder if it's just I'm unique that I've had two.
I don't think so.
Coworkers. I think not.
I don't think so.
And I had no clue.
And it's not just being on the road, too, but just being in the back, going really fast with a 220-pound person that may or may not be mentally stable at the time. Stuff like that never used to faze me, and all of a sudden I'm terrified. So that's sort of changed my outlook on things, probably for the better, but...
Do you think it's because you literally are carrying this fetus around with you versus once your baby is born,
maybe
you'll be separated?
Maybe so. I feel a little more fragile. And even my boyfriend, who's not scared of anything, I've noticed early in the morning he'll wake up when I'm leaving at 5 and tell me to drive safe.
Yep.
Like every day. He didn't used to do that.
Right. Well, let's switch gears. Let's talk about, do you read books?
I do. I don't read very many paramedic books. But I did read that
You say that like you have guilt.
No, a little bit of guilt. But I did read the 1,000 Naked Strangers book. And it was good.
It was very entertaining. I read it pretty fast.
Yeah. It's a fun read. That might be a good read for someone in school. Just
I think so,
take
too.
your mind off things and give you a break.
Or do you go to any websites, medical-based stuff?
Life in the Fast Lane is kind of my go-to.
That's a good one.
Partially because anytime I search something, it comes up. But I like how simple it is. So that's a great one. And then really just for looking up meds and stuff, I use Google all the time. Because I used to carry around a little pocket drug guide. And I never used it.
Right.
Never.
Yep.
Not ever. So
that is another thing I wanted to know is, do you open up any apps while you're on calls?
we have a SOC app a lot of times on the way just to double check a dose or ensure that my mind is going the right direction with the treatment plan. That's really helpful. I'm not a very tech-oriented person, so...
Do you have a hard copy of the SOCs in your truck as well?
Yes, and in my pocket, usually. Usually.
Okay.
Hopefully. And also I carry, we do DSI out there, so carry a weight chart with the doses of each medication, because I think in a stressful time it would be really difficult to calculate.
Yeah.
The charts make me feel so much better.
Yeah.
So I always have those with me in the SOCs.
I'm convinced that we placed way too much emphasis on memory in medicine. Like, medicine is not a memory game. This isn't like, we're not playing a game here. We need reference cards. And so the reference card that you're describing, is it in your SOCs or is this something that's separate?
It's separate.
Is it laminated?
No, it should be.
It's just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You shove this in your pocket?
It's in my little book.
It's in your book.
It's in my little book with all my stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just free.
And then there's like a weight-based or a height-based one. So what's an ideal weight for someone of this height?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
So
like
you
a
can
stroke
estimate a weight?
sheet too. Just things that we need to know on a stroke so that I can hand that to someone and they can figure out all the details I need while someone else is helping me tend to the patient. That's really helpful as well.
Any other reference cards that you use? GCS?
I have no, only because we have that in the computer, so
Okay.
it's really easy to just plug it in.
Yep.
That's one thing that I admittedly never quite memorized perfectly, and I wish that I had.
I disagree. I don't think we're supposed to.
It's a lot.
I think it was never... So the two neurologists that developed the GCS, they never intended it to be like an emergency medicine tool. it was an in-hospital, coma score to see how people were trending over many hours. And they would sit down with a clipboard and slowly go through this scale. And so when we laid it over into our world, I think a lot of people have guilt about not knowing the components of the GCS, but I think it's actually quite frankly, like, if someone's low on the GCS, that's a high acuity call, and you're not going to remember the nuances of it.
One other thing, though, too, is a CPR checklist. Because while I've discovered that a code is not at all the most difficult call you can work, there are so many things just to be checked off a checklist. So, we have to make a termination phone call to the medical director, and he wants to know very specific things. What was the rhythm whenever you got there? When did it change? What was capnography? And you like to have a nice organized paragraph to tell him about that patient when you call. So it's got sort of just a list of bullets that he wants to know that after something stressful, you might not think of them all. And you want to impress your medical director.
Yes,
too,
you do. So. You want to maintain their confidence. And along the lines of giving a synopsis of a patient, when you call in radio reports, do you do it off the cuff? Do you have a formula? Do you have a reference card you use for that?
Not really, but I'm a little bit radio shy, so I always kind of do it out loud beforehand. And it is much more simple, I think, than I always did it in school.
Right. Walk me through the equipment that you carry with you on your person. So I'm curious, like, if you just started, if you have a belt.
Well, I used to carry a belt for a few weeks, and I hated it. It got in the way, and it was bulky, and it kind of pulled my pants down a little. And I had all this stuff in there, but I hardly ever used it. So now I'm more of a pocket-oriented person. And honestly, it's not very much. So try to have my little pocket SOCs with me with all my charts. Try to have a stethoscope on the truck. Don't carry it on my person because I will leave it on scene every single time. And if you hang it around your neck, it hits the patient in the face very frequently. And you're only using it for a second, so...
That's a good point.
I just leave it in the truck.
I've heard people make the argument of putting it around your neck is dangerous, too. That always seemed a little, like...
It's a little...
emphasized.
I agree.
But I'm constantly taking stethoscopes off of people's necks at the trauma center where we take students because they get busy, and that's basically in their view, actually. It's in their field of view when they're doing procedures, IVs, and such. I just end up taking that thing off of them.
Yeah. And we have one in the airway bag, and it's not great, but it works, and it doesn't gross me out really to use it.
Right.
I always have gum. I always have a little money for who knows when. But as far as gear, shears, that's one thing I do have all the time. And a pen light. Because even though we have those everywhere, you just never know when you're going to need it and what you're going to need it for. That's pretty much it, though. I don't have the big fancy belt.
No. So you're not packed down with flashlights and multi-tools?
Never carried a flashlight.
How about...
And I'm sure I bet you next shift I'm going to need a flashlight. I was carrying, like, a little pocket knife tool, and that was kind of nice for, like, prying oxygen tubing off or stuff like that, but... I really have only used it a couple times, and I don't usually carry it,
So how did you come to stop carrying it?
More like going to bed and having really full pockets and not having that belt to take off.
Right.
But really, the SOCs, I can sleep with those. And a lot of things now, I'll just leave in the truck. I just leave them, like, in a little cubby somewhere in the truck, and so I'm not just schlepping it around all the time.
Right. So when I was in paramedic school, I worked full-time and went to school. So I was burning the candle at both ends and accumulated a large sleep debt. And as a consequence of that, I was doing a long transfer, at least an hour and a half one way, and fell asleep while driving with a patient in the back. And I knew I fell asleep because my foot came off the accelerator, luckily, and I just the truck went, right, and I could just hear it winding down. Immediately woke me up. I'm sure it was just a very tiny, micro sleep that I experienced, but it was alarming enough to really rethink all my practices about what I was doing. Has that ever happened to you, driving either the ambulance or home from shift or anything like that?
Home from shift, I've dozed off before, and it's pretty scary. But it's always that same sort of thing, you know, you feel yourself drifting and wake up. But now, even if I don't really want to be drinking coffee, even just having like half a cup before driving home.
Right.
Which is kind of sad that I have to do that. But I also drive an hour from work, so on those shifts, it can be pretty intense trying to stay awake.
Right.
But the radio's great, and I found even if I have like a great playlist on my phone, and I hate a lot of what's on the radio, it's better to put on the radio because I will sit there and be trying to find something.
I like that. That's a good habit.
Instead of being really relaxed with whatever I have.
That makes sense.
So
you could just hate all the morning talk show people and just hate them and just keep switching around.
Keep hating them. Yes.
So what, if you could put yourself on the most challenging call, you could paint a picture of that call, what would it look like? What would it involve? Where would it be?
I've yet to experience a really chaotic scene with multiple patients, and I don't think that I feel prepared to manage that kind of scene yet. It's something you talk about in school with ops and everything, but on the side of a highway with multiple patients, managing resources, how many extra trucks do you need? Are you going to call a helicopter? That kind of stresses me out at night because I've yet to have to do it. And I also know that, you know, it's going to be a team effort when it happens, but I've never actually had to triage. So that's something I need to constantly just sort of review in my head how it would go.
If you could go back and have a chat with yourself during paramedic school, is there any advice that you would give yourself?
Well, I will admit, in paramedic school, to me, it was all about being like a hardcore paramedic. You know, I was so proud of myself for going to paramedic school, and I felt so cool saying I was in paramedic school and always thinking about the worst case that could happen. And I think a lot of people feel that way, but I wish I could go back and talk about how important it is to pay attention to every detail of every lecture and keep all the notes. I wish I had done that, and I know a lot of my classmates did, so I can still contact them and look at them. But so much of it is not about being a badass, but instead about being extremely compassionate all the time and taking really good care of yourself so that you don't do things like fall asleep at the wheel.
Yep.
Because the majority of calls are about patience and compassion and humility and not being like the hero.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a physiological response when the tones go off?
Yes, and it is so annoying because even if it's not my call, I'm suddenly more alert and awake and stressed out. I feel this literal dump of chemicals in my body, and it is just so irritating. And then also I can go home and hear something that kind of sounds like a tone, and the same thing happens when I'm off work.
I have a chiming clock whose first note I realized was the same first note of the tones. It was the worst. I turned that chime off.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that physiological response. But when it is your call, I mean, it helps get ready for things.
Yeah, you're looking at it positively. I was worried that it clouded my thinking. On stressful calls, or even actually precepting students when we've had like high acuity patients come in and they're busy doing their stuff, I'll find myself humming a tune very quietly just to myself. And it's actually when I hear myself humming, I realize, oh, I must be nervous. Is there anything that you notice that you do to help get through those crazy stressful calls?
I'm a really deep, long sigher. Like like long, and it always sounds like a little frustrated, so I kind of have to watch it because I don't even realize I'm doing it.
Did somebody else point it out to you?
Yes, when I'm nervous speaking with a patient, I laugh, and it almost comes off as I'm laughing at them.
Right.
But I've really worked on that one because I've run into it a couple of times, actually. And that's less on the really high acuity and more, you know, with the patient that makes me nervous or is being rude. But the really sighs really do help. As long as there's less growling.
I was going to say, that sigh sounded a bit like a moan.
They're a little growly, like a little roary.
It's a groan.
Yeah, but deep breath, and just taking that just a second as a break before you do anything. It's really helpful.
It's really nice that somebody pointed that out to you.
Yeah.
We used to videotape students during these large-scale megacodes and let them watch themselves. I elected not to keep doing them because I think it was a little early in their career because they didn't like seeing themselves. And because they would pick up on strange kind of tics or whatever, things they would do like that.
Well, and they need the confidence at that point to keep going,
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how confident, though, I feel even after a year. And not confident clinically, with treatments and plans and calls. There's 1,000 calls that I haven't seen and am not prepared for and might do poorly with. But just as far as, like, presence, appearing confident.
Right.
I feel like it's leaps and bounds, not to toot my own horn. But it's amazing how fast it comes. And I don't know if it's the service I work for, really enjoying being around all those people that I get along with so well, who are really encouraging. And then just being in a more rural environment, everyone. So that helps. But I've been really happy with those changes because I used to be so uncomfortable all the time.
Mm-hmm. So now you literally can see yourself standing more squarely on your 2 feet, just kind of being more settled on calls, or what is it that you notice that's changed?
Just not being so afraid. Yeah, I guess standing on my own 2 feet and knowing that I will make it through to the end of the call. And things might go wrong, but I guess also accepting that might happen and being okay with it.
Right.
Whereas before that was like the end of the world, and now it's just...
Yeah, I'm curious to see what you'll say about this. Do you think there is a particular personality type that makes for a good medic?
Yes. Although there are many, there are many personality types that make for a good medic. And it's such a weird field. It's such a weird job. It's the weirdest job that I can think of.
It is a weird job.
But I think someone who's really adaptable and can get along with pretty much anyone. Oh yeah, I keep using the word compassionate, but I think the person has to be at least a little bit empathetic because otherwise you're going to get so frustrated and burnt out. You have to genuinely care about other people to make it work, or else you're going to be acting all the time.
Yeah.
Good sense of humor. That's really important, I think.
I think so too. I think if you don't start with a good sense of humor, you develop one.
True. And just being open-minded, too. Because, open-minded to your own shortcomings. Open-minded to all different people in walks of life.
When you, first day of paramedic school, did you think you needed to be a certain personality to be a paramedic?
The only thing that comes to mind is someone who likes adrenaline, someone who likes the rush and can stay calm under pressure. But even that's, like, more learnable than being an open-minded person.
Yes.
That's
a skill set.
Yeah, it's a skill. It's not even a personality trait, I would say.
Right. As an educator, and I've been doing this for 10 years, when I first started teaching, I thought during orientation I could pick out who was going to be a good medic and who wasn't, based on general, like, temperament, affect, presentation of self. I was completely wrong. And what I've learned is that there are so many different personality types, from extreme introverts to extreme extroverts. It's been so humbling for me to realize that I can't pick them.
Yeah, introvert, extrovert. I definitely thought that in the beginning too, not having taught for 10 years, but, I had some really good, close friends that happened to be extremely shy, and I always wondered how it was going to happen. But it's amazing what kind of patients he connects with that will not give me the time of day because I'm annoying to them, and I'm loud and I'm obnoxious. But his quiet demeanor and his different sense of humor works wonders with, this kind of person. So as long as you still have that open-minded, sense of humor, even if it's, different than mine, it just, I don't know. It definitely takes all kinds. And I like being paired with someone that's not like me.
Is there anything about being a paramedic that you had no clue was going to be hard that's turned out to be insanely hard? You just didn't see it coming.
The driving. I didn't know how hard that was going to be on my body, like driving around all the time. Like we drive around all day. That's our job. We're driving. And I didn't put that together of how many hours that means. So that's been hard. Really getting along with partners. And I get along with most people, and most of the people that I work with are really easy to get along with. But, being with someone for 24 to 48 hours can be sometimes trying, depending on the person.
Yep. Do you have the space to get away from your partner on shift?
Yes.
The room?
And that's nice. Mm-hmm. And, that's the thing, too, is everybody kind of understands when you need just a minute to decompress or be alone and I'll go outside and walk around the station. And it's not because I can't stand that person or something. It's just a long time to be with anyone.
It really is.
Even your best friend, eventually you're going to be like, okay, we're done hanging out. You can go home now. I'm going to go to my house and I'll see you tomorrow. It's like, you can't do that.
Well, even with our most intimate, significant others,
absolutely.
We are not tied on the radius that you're tied. I mean, you have to be in basically a certain radius to the truck at all times, or the pager system. So it falls into the column of this is a weird job.
It is a weird job.
What kind of stethoscope do you have?
I have a Littman that I got on Craigslist for $30.
Oh, that's a good find. If you could go back to your paramedic program and you're in charge, how would you change it? What would you, right? Because every program is having to think about where they want to put their time. And so some programs opt to spend a lot of time with cardiology. Other ones emphasize how to drive an ambulance, actually. So what would you add to the curriculum, delete from the curriculum, or just generally, mostly what would you emphasize more?
I just want to give you a good answer because really cardiology was great to have a whole semester of it, and I thought it was amazing, and I almost want to say an extra semester. I mean, I almost want to say I wish cardiology was spread out just a little bit more and longer, which is crazy because it's already a semester long, which is way more than most programs, but it is so incredibly important. And not even to go into, different syndromes or problems and all their tiny details and things that there's 3% of in the world. But I guess just to, really ingrain it,
Yeah, sure.
Because for some people, I think it just comes and then they're going to remember forever. But for other people, I don't feel like it's ingrained in me. Right. I don't feel like it's a second nature. Whereas some of my friends who went through the same program can look at a 12 lead and give me details about it that we learned for one day in cardiology.
Right. What do you eat on shift?
I try to eat well, but then that means preparation, The public loves to feed us. They do not feed us fruits and vegetables. They feed us pizza and donuts.
Yeah.
Because that'll make you sleepy and feel really crappy, too, which is the last thing you need when you're up all night long. But when you're up all night long and you're hungry, and that's there.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
I used to use the cookie dough ice cream as a consolation prize after hard calls. I would go get myself a pint.
There is something magical about sitting around eating junk food with your crew after something really, really terrible happens.
It really is.
It's just special.
It's the equivalent of having a few beers since you can't do that on shift.
It is.
It's our equivalent. What's your routine for preparing your uniform and your boots and such?
I'm kind of a scattered person, so I've learned that everything that goes on my uniform needs to go in the boot because I will not forget the boots. But the keys, the name tag, we wear a little bit of bling on our shirts.
Right.
Pins and stuff. Those need to go in there. My belt, when I'm able to wear a belt, just my regular pants belt. All that stuff needs to be in the boot, in the car.
The night before
we go, yes. Along with clean uniform. That always helps. And I've got it down to a science. It used to be so stressful. I remember in school, it used to take me 2 hours to get everything ready. And I wanted everything perfect in a little pile, or else I was going to forget. And oh my gosh, I forgot this one thing. And now it's just like I can get ready so fast without even thinking about it. And I'm so thankful for that.
You said you have bling on your uniform, and then you talked about pens, and it made me think, do you...
Oh, pens. They go in the boot, too.
So writing pens.
Yes.
Talk to me about, what do you write with?
A pen, and then lately I've been carrying like a Sharpie pen.
Yeah.
So
I love
helpful.
the Sharpie. I found the Sharpie about a year in as well.
Yeah.
What do you use your Sharpie for?
A lot of things. It works better actually to write on the glove, I found. And then say on a critical call, I think I would prefer that for labeling medications over a pen. Mm-hmm. Especially if things are wet.
Right.
Or gross. Or, glossy. The pen's not going to work. And it's definitely going to work. The Sharpie is definitely going to work, whereas the pen may or may not work.
Yeah, good point. What kind of pen?
Just any old pen.
Okay, so you don't have like a...
because I lose them so frequently.
Yeah.
I'm the pen loser person. I can't hold on to a nice, fancy thing.
So with EMS partners, we were talking about how it's weird. There is, because you have these shared experiences, like the eating the ice cream after tough calls, some people confuse that with romantic intimacy. Mm-hmm. Has that happened to you?
A little bit. I mean, yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. Because it is such a weird world away from your normal world.
Yeah.
It's like so separate, and you laugh so hard in that truck, and you have all these hours on the road at night telling stories about your life. And I've definitely been like, am I just really good friends with this person, or do I have a crush on them?
Right.
Or
nobody talks about this either.
Not to a point where I'm like concerned or felt my relationship was threatened, but sure. Just kind of like that weird feeling of like I feel really close and intimate with this person. Mm-hmm. And I totally see how it could go further.
Right.
Because I feel like EMS was partially responsible for my breakup. We're in it to win it now. Right. We've been through it, and he's not a bad guy, but he told me we had broken up, and we talked on the phone while I was on shift, which was a huge mistake. And he told me something that really rocked my world, like in a bad way.
Yeah.
And right after that, we got tones to go to an MVC, like in the rain. Mm-hmm. And I remember just being so angry that he put me into that mindset before going. But at the same time, I didn't think about that for a good 2 hours. And what a great break.
Right.
And it didn't involve drugs, and it didn't involve alcohol, and it didn't involve me doing something stupid. When you break up, you go through a period of manic depression. You're just nuts. But then it was all great, and I'm with my family, and we're eating ice cream, and I'm with whoever I might have a crush on, and I'm making it through this breakup. But then when you get off shift, it hits you 10 times harder. Because you've been distracted in some shape or form for 24 hours. God, this schedule is so hard on a relationship. Mm-hmm. But, and then, he was working at a bar at the time. I was just like, I don't even, how do you expect me to deal with this? And he's like, you sleep in the same room with a dude that's handsome and go through these life or death situations, and you're hanging out with firefighters. He had never seen the firefighters at where we work, but hanging out with firefighters all day, eating dinner with these people, watching movies with these people, and you're with them so much more than you're with me. How do you think I feel? And I was like, oh my God, you're so right. Mm-hmm. I can't believe how right you are.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm carrying ice buckets up the stairs for hours, in a nasty bar. It smells like puke. And I'm like, well, my work smells like puke too. But, I just worry about it.
I want to go back to something that you said, and that was you had a heated conversation on the phone, tons dropped, and it was actually awesome on the call because it gives you that mental break. Mm-hmm. I think that's what captivated me. That's why I was drawn to the job and love the job. And that is, it's certainly not meditative, but it is, you are truly, you get out of your own head on calls. You can't think about your life.
Right. And I thought that was going to be hard. Mm-hmm. Going, through any kind of emotional turmoil. I was like, my patient care is going to suffer. But I feel like it was better because I was not at all wrapped up. Mm-hmm. And part of that is turning your phone off or leaving your phone, because having your phone on a call is obviously not, especially when you're in that situation. But yeah, I was so shocked at how much better I was at my job. Mm-hmm. during that time, just because it was meditative.
Right. It was your escape. It was actually your happy place. Mm-hmm. What's your sleep pattern like? So 24 hours on, maybe 48 hours on?
Sleeping, even with a normal schedule, is really hard for me. Like,
Well, it's not 24/48s aren't normal.
Yeah, 24/48s. Have a hard time sleeping during the day. I've gotten better at going to sleep at work, though. Napping. Gotten way better at napping at work. I don't know what it is. It's just having 48 hours off, even if you're really tired, it seems like a long time, but I don't want to waste my time sleeping, so that makes it really hard to go home and go to sleep. Because I'm like, oh, I'm finally free. I have all this stuff I want to do. But it took me like a good 6 months to learn that none of that stuff's going to matter if I'm grumpy and exhausted. Mm-hmm. And, it got to the point where certain people that I loved would just be like, I don't want to be around you until you've had a nap. Because I would just try to do it all. I have all these deadlines in my head constantly, and they're not real. So, it took a really long time to learn that I need that sleep.
What kind of a deadline? What are you talking about?
I don't know, just like, this thing on my to-do list has to be done by tomorrow.
Okay.
Even though it really doesn't ever have to happen,
Let's say, for whatever reason, healthcare doesn't exist anymore. It's not part of the world.
I like the arts, writing, creative writing especially, I love. And the same aspect, that I love about healthcare is the people. So something with people.
Yeah.
But not too much people time, because I was also going to be a social worker, so I was in that program for a year at UT, which is kind of funny because medical, being a paramedic is such a mix of biology, science, and social work, and it's kind of like merged my two passions that I had for a while. And then travel is my other major thing that I love, and then getting to like be so mobile all the time.
Right.
Is sort of like traveling. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know where I'm going to be, who I'm going to meet. Every single day is an adventure. And that sounds cheesy, but it's so true. So back to the original question, I think like journalism would be really awesome. I wish somebody would pay me to write about traveling.
Do you ever write about your EMS experiences? Do you ever write? I know you want to write, but do you actually do that?
I do. And I keep saying I'm going to start like a journal specifically for calls, and I think that would be a great outlet because the people I'm close to will listen, and I have some family in medical care, but it's not the same as like writing it down, and then how interesting to read that a year later.
Yep.
Man, I gotta do that. I'm gonna do that.
I just recently talked to a medic who will basically just journal out calls that he learned from, just so basically to cement the memory of he's not diffusing, he's more just trying to remember like lessons learned the hard way.
See, I think mine would be more like about the character, that would be more intimate characters, anecdotes about the patient and whatever. When I first started, I was writing about all of the employees that I worked with because there's such a fascinating group of people and you learn so much about them so fast. So I was writing about, there's a guy that we work with who lives out on a creek and he's been there forever and he just is like one of the sweetest, smartest, most passionate people we've ever met. And I wrote like a lot about him, like a whole chapter in my journal just because he was so interesting.
Yeah. Does he know?
Probably, because he writes too, so sometimes we'll share, which doesn't seem like it relates to EMS, but it just goes to show how interesting it just attracts the most diverse group of people. When that's something I love about it.
When I've taken inventory of why I do this job or why I did that job, it's changed through the years why I think I did it, right? So my understanding of why I did it. But I remember being a kid and on my way, I would get allergy shots. And on the way to get allergy shots, we would pass by this fire station. And I would see the fire guys just sitting down on this picnic table, just chatting. And I'm like, that looks so cool. Like they're just, it looked like a lot of, they had like a built-in little tribe, right?
It's like old men getting coffee in the morning.
It's just like that. And I thought, I want to be a part of that. And that is something that I miss about being in the field, because my current work as an educator is just not the same. Like, you're not going through literally like threatening environments together, right? Do you know why you decided to become a paramedic?
I kind of ran out of options. I did. I went to school for so long, and I wasted so much money. And I remember, like, my parents were helping me pay for some of this UT stuff. We were sort of splitting it, and I was just so distracted by the world and how wonderful it was, and this city and my bicycle and new friends, that it made it really hard for me to study genetics. And I think now, you know, I could do it if I put my mind to it. But at the time, everything else was just so much more appealing. So quit and traveled a lot. And came back from traveling, and my mom's like, you got to figure something out. Like, you can't just work, you know, in this wine bar where I worked. And it was great. But I was like, yeah, I know. You know, it's not stimulating me. And I knew I needed something. And my friend was in basic, and I thought, well, what's $1,000 in a semester? If I hate it, then moving on. And then took basic and was just hooked. Went straight to paramedic after that.
What did you like about it?
It's just that it merged those social and science. Social science and, like I said, travel or excitement and different experiences every day. People, like different people every single day. And I like the adrenaline factor, even though later I see that while that is a big part of it, and, you know, definitely drew me in the beginning, it's the day-to-day is less fueled by that. But
It sounds like you're really intrigued by your patients as people.
yeah.
I remember going in people's homes, the low acuity calls, and if I wasn't running the call, I would get a little distracted, like looking at their paintings
absolutely.
and their self-portraits and things like that.
I get so into it. And then we get in the truck later, and I'm like, did you see that golden dog that was full of marbles? And they're like, no. Whoa, where were you? And I was like, oh, it was in that other room. And they're like, why were you in there? I was looking for medication. Yeah, just pictures of their family. But it makes it real, too, because I see how people in the hospital have a hard time treating these patients as people when they're turning and burning.
Right. They see everybody in
the same place.
Well, and they see them all in a gown, a hospital gown.
Yeah, they don't see their house and their dog, and or, you know, the people in really bad situations that are peeing in buckets with no AC.
Yeah. Yep.
Kid.
We must have been in the same house.
Yeah.
I know. Oh, there was something I was going to ask you. And then I started thinking about that call I ran with all the gallons of pee.
It makes you so thankful for your own life. The job does. And it's made me want to be healthier, for sure.
Yeah. It's made me want to be safer. The health part, I have trouble. It's like the long game. I have a little trouble with that. But the short game, as far as behaviors that can lead to, you know, trauma, injuries, and things, I've gotten, I don't call it like a stress response, but like when it rains, I get like a little, I think, more nervous than the average bear on the road because of wrecks I've seen in the rain.
Oh, yeah. Or if the person doesn't come home right when they say,
Yeah.
then they must be dead.
Yeah.
Like, for sure.
Do you have a permanent partner, or do they float around?
They float. Especially right now. They're very floaty.
Okay. So I can't ask you basically like what do you and your partner talk about, but just I guess we can generalize here. You are going to a call, and let's say it sounds like a medium acuity call. It's not CPR in progress, regular old general sickness call. What do you guys talk about on the way to the call?
I still like to go through just differentials, but it also depends on the partner. You know, if they're really cool, then we'll just turn up the radio. But
Right.
But there are certain calls that still scare me. Like, I'm not that comfortable with respiratory calls. I mean, I am, but that's one of the ones that really gets my blood pumping. The stroke is like, meh. Even the cardiac is like, all right, this will be fun. But the respiratory just kind of makes me a little extra nervous. So
What is it about respiratory calls that
they just feel so urgent? And they are, you know. And I think it's the fact that I do have tools to use. Like a stroke, I can't really do much. So that takes some pressure off. But respiratory is like, you know, you can make it better or worse. And the patient is so stressed out. So that's hard.
Often they have a dramatic presentation, right? It's audible and Yeah, it does depend on the partner, doesn't it? Like what the vibe is on the way to a call. Like some just don't even want to engage the topic of the nature of the call, and you don't even talk about it. Like you know, both of you are thinking about it though.
That's why I love working with people that I graduated with. We just are on the same path, trained the same way.
Yeah.
And I don't care if we've run this asthma call 10 times, both of us, and it is going to be probably easy. They're going to be cool with me sitting there going, okay, so let's think about this. Well, What else could it be? What should we do first, you know?
Yeah, sounds really good. Let's wrap it up.
All right.
Thank you for coming and visiting with me. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed hearing your anecdotes. I appreciate, in particular, you just getting real and just telling me how it really is.
Yeah.
Because that's what people need to hear.
It's true. It is so true, because that's one thing I did wish I knew of, you know, some of the stuff, that it's not about being a badass.
Right.
It's really about not being that.